Good morning, everybody. Hey, I just really would like to take the opportunity to thank the really robust crowd of senior leaders, both military and civilian, that are here today. It's remarkable, the remarkable up-tempo that you're under every day, but yet you find time to be here to talk about the important subjects says a lot about how we emphasize being a learning organization, so I greatly appreciate that. On behalf of my battle buddy, Miss Kathy Miller, who's here with me today, we are just proud to be a part of this as the Army G-4 team. But we want to thank, of course, General Sullivan and the entire AUSA team for providing us this venue to talk about the things that are needed to be talked about so that we can bring the right reflection and thought process to solving very difficult problems. So, sir, thank you very much. I arrived in the Pentagon last September, and it's been a quick 9 months. It's been 9 months that have been incredibly busy. And one thing I've concluded is that any assumption that the wars ending in Iraq and Afghanistan were going to bring us to a peacetime posture is now a false assumption. As we work through this, we face many similar obstacles and pace that we fought the last 14 years. Our up-tempo is increasing, and we are receiving less funding in support of this up-tempo. The velocity of uncertainty continues to grow. Today, 9 out of 10 of our active duty divisions are committed. We are increasing presence in Africa, South Korea, Iraq, Europe, and Kuwait. Every one of these areas a year ago, we thought were going to come to some low posture and would not require reinforcement. We do not have a feeling of predictability. We have had times in our past when we could focus on certain threats, the Soviet Union, and recently Afghanistan and Iraq. None of these times were easy, but they allowed us to focus ourselves, allowed the Army to focus on training, resourcing, and planning. Today, we have such a wide range of potential requirements that we find ourselves having to be ready for everything at all times. At the same time, money is a significant issue for us. It's about predictability of money, not the total money in the end. I am not sure everyone has processed this, and we need to focus on how we are going to reach out into the future and meet our requirements. The sharp decline in funding will make it harder for us to plan, train, reset equipment, and improve readiness, and significantly more, grow the youth to lead us into the future. Because we cannot afford to do everything, we must collectively focus on efforts to achieve the greatest impact. I believe these areas are logistics leader development, Army readiness, and the Army operating concept and Force 2025. The Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army have given us clear guidance. They've described a vision which requires us to win in a complex world. We must develop leaders who are agile and adaptive. We must build a ready and modern Army. And we must ensure that we are globally responsive and regionally engaged. All difficult tasks on their own. In order to ensure that we can meet the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army's intent, we must ensure that we can logistically execute at the tactical, operational, and strategic level the following. We must be able to force project ourselves. We must receive ourselves in sparse locations. We must be able to execute onward movement, distribution management, and material management. And then we must develop the doctrine for the battlefield and I dare say garrison that allows us to codify the structures and relationships of sustainment units in support of the maneuver commander. We have nothing else to do but to support the maneuver commander. With that said, or with that backdrop, I'd like to talk about 3 questions that I think are important that I ask you to assess and reflect on today as we listen to the panels. First, as the Army becomes expeditionary again, what does that mean to us logistically? 2, given the challenges I just mentioned, how do we create and sustain material readiness? And 3, How do we achieve innovation to drive future sustainment concepts? Followed by me, Lieutenant General Weish, my battle buddy and the Deputy Commanding General at AMC, will provide us a keynote introduction, and he will focus on the role of the Army Materiel Command as it leads us through these trying times. General Vai, General Weish, and the entire AMC community is really our Mecca, and I'm looking forward to those comments, Larry. Before Larry comes up here, I'd like to talk about a couple topics. First, expeditionary logistics. As I look at the next 10 years, what keeps me up at night is our ability to become a logistics force that can operate OCONUS quickly and rapidly and ensure that we are able to bring the lines of communication to the maneuver commander's requirements. We've been unable to do this in the past because we've been under our R4 Gen force model. We understood the predictability of Iraq and Afghanistan, and we knew what that brought, and we adapted to it. But that brought a great deal of predictability to ourselves. We knew every 12 months when we were going to deploy. We knew where we were deploying to. We knew the equipment would be there. We knew that contractor support would be there. And we understood at the end of 12 months we were going to return. This is not our future. Our future is expeditionary. Today, when I go out to combat training centers, what I see is lost critical skills of our sustainers. Our skills at the tactical and operational logistics level have atrophied. We have developed a core of leaders and soldiers, not to their fault, but to the decisions of the past that will not enable us into the future. And so we must take this on, and we must focus on developing them as leaders of the future. This was brought home to me recently when I visited Commanding General Staff College. And all 1,000 majors, 1,000 majors, all entered the Army in 2003. Several in the audience were second lieutenants in my battalion. And in the last 12 years, they have grown up in an Army that's been predictable, that's been provided to them. And now we have to turn this and make them agile and adaptive leaders. I am confident we can do this, but it's going to take a focused effort. Second, we must make sure that we can account for and improve material readiness in two categories. First, we have to ensure that we maintain property accountability as a forefront to maintaining standards and discipline in our formations. We eliminated property accountability, again, for the right reasons during the war so that we could focus on our mission at hand. Luckily, General Casey and Lieutenant General Stevenson in 2010 recognized this paradigm shift, and they readjusted our thinking, and they brought back the campaign on property accountability. I will tell you that their vision and their support to this effort demonstrated that cultures can change in the near time. In just a few short years, we've regained accountability. We've redistributed and turned in excess equipment, and we have filled shortages across the Army to increase our equipment on hand readiness. But we need to do more. We need to ensure that this is a capability and a culture that is sustainable well into the future. We must be good stewards of our property, and we must execute this because we want to be trusted by the taxpayers who fund our equipment readiness. The other key component is material readiness. Of material readiness is maintenance. We must ensure that we can take ourselves into an expeditionary environment and survive on our own. We were supported well by contractors over the last 10 years, and they did what we asked them to do, and they did it magnificently. My fear, my concern, what keeps me up at night is when I crossed the border in 2003, there was no contractors with us. There was no FSRs, there was no LARs, it was just green suiters. My battalion drove from Kuwait to Baghdad to Tikrit, to the Iranian border, to Balad, back to Baghdad. And we did it ourselves. We need to bring back this capability so that we can go do this again. This is going to be a hard struggle. But I feel confident that we have the mechanics, the operators, the crews, and the leaders that will bring us there. But it takes standards and discipline. We have to understand the processes. We have to ensure that the supply chain is capable to support our requirements. We have to plan, coordinate our op-tempo of training to ensure that the support is required, is capable of being executed. And we, as the logisticians supporting the maneuver commander, must help them see this. The good news is that we have a new tool on the horizon. Based on the vision of many before me, we are about to implement, or we have started implementing, the Ground Combat Support System Army, or GCSS Army. We are over 70% fielded of Wave 1, which is the conversion of supply support activities. In January, we started fielding Wave 2, which converts property books, supply rooms, and unit funding, as well as the maintenance aspects in the motor pool. Now, we have just begun this, but the efforts associated in fielding, demonstrated by the division commander of the 82nd Airborne, Major General Rich Clark, provides me a lot of sense of good that we are going to be successful. This division commander, this warfighter, spent more time in the motor pool over the last 90 days than he did executing operations because he recognized the importance of GCSS Army. We as logisticians need to inform our maneuver commanders and ensure that they understand and grasp the importance. Maintenance and supply is not logistics business. It is commander's business. But we are held accountable to be the experts. And I have confidence that you will be the experts and you will coach, teach, mentor, and be a part of the success of this program. It is clearly the game changer in logistics. And I need your support as we move through it. My third point is, how do we achieve innovation in support of future sustainment concepts? As many of you know, the Board on Army Science and Technology released a study showing us how logistics research and development program is a great input to where we're going. It is the first step in a right direction, and we will hear more today as the panels go on. I also invite you to question and talk to General Retired Solomon, who will be here later today, who helped lead the board in the findings that he presented. When it comes to innovation, I'm a big believer that concepts should drive technology. Let me say that again. Concepts should drive technology, not technology driving concepts. Too many times you see technology trying to drive a concept. People come to me, come to the Army, come to many of you, having developed some really neat technology, and then they look for a purpose to use it. This is not helpful. We need you to understand our concepts and adapt technology to enable them. For example, in my travels, I have recently watched a lot of units thinking forward as they prepare their Army Stockage List, or ASL, or repair parts, Class 9, for deployment. Units have taken it upon themselves to move themselves out of buildings. They've relocated their Class 9 into containers. Simple 20-foot containers that are designed to support the ASL. The simple concept that really enables this is the container has a tow bar on it. It's built in place. So the units operate in these containers, they maintain their ASL, they do daily operations, and then when called upon to deploy, a truck comes and hooks it up and brings it to the airfield. We're not reloading ASLs from bins to containers. We don't know where it's at. We have a manageable process. This is a concept change that's been enabled by simple technology. That's what we need. That is the type of systems and innovation thinking that we require. Another great example strategically is the way we're looking at the Army rail process. Today we have 3 different approaches. On some bases we have no locomotives, on some bases we have government-run locomotives, and on some we have contractor-run locomotives. This is archaic. We continue to load trains in a circus-style event from the end to the front. We know industry is doing this differently. How can industry partner with us and come in and demonstrate how they could possibly run our locomotive requirements, how they can innovate the way we load trains, how they can help us move to ports of debarkation with simpler and greater ease. As I close out, I want to point out 4 challenges that I ask that you consider as we work through the panels. First, the first challenge is, how do we set the theater? We have to be able to respond rapidly to threats from nation states and non-state actors. We need to be able to use emerging technologies to do this. We need to be able to add innovation so that we create a force projection capability, a force reception capability, and our ability to obtain freedom of movement once we're on the battlefield. Future forces will require the capability to rapidly open ports of debarkation, conduct entry operations in austere environments and complex environments. We will need a global network of fixed and mobile nodes, land, air, and sea, in order to overcome anti-excess area denial challenges. Second, we must be able to challenge ourselves in sustainment operations. We want to take our forces and make them more expeditionary, as I've talked about earlier. We will require increased efficiency and reduced consumption on the battlefield. Transforming the way the Army uses both energy and water is a critical enabler for the range of military operations and capabilities that we will need. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq showed us how difficult it is to deliver energy across the battlefield. We want our future force to use less fuel, less water, get more out of our batteries, and make energy available at the point of consumption. This could potentially mean less logistics force structure, fewer soldiers on the battlefield, and right now we have many technologies we are testing at Fort Devens and Fort Leavenworth that will help us. Industry is doing that for us. We cannot do that ourselves, but we need you to be focused on our end states. The third challenge is maintaining freedom of maneuver. Future operations will demand that the Army be prepared to ensure access to ports, terminals, airfields, and bases. We must reduce reliance on strategic lift, enable globally responsive sustainment, and rapidly mobilize the industrial base to support an expeditionary army. We will need to integrate the joint forces capabilities to provide sustainment to multinational forces and for the government and international partners. Today, you will see an assortment of joint officers in our panels, to include Mark Faulkner, the Marine Corps G-4, and Bob Rourke, the J-4. I encourage you to ask them questions so that we can grow. We are looking at several technologies and new processes to address these challenges. Technologies that enable engineering assessments that provide rapid repairs, that reduce our reliance on strategic lift, by reducing the overall footprint of the force. We are also trying to leverage advances in unmanned systems and business intelligence services. And we are working with the joint community to develop policies enabling public-private partnerships in advancing manufacturing. The last area I'd like to talk about is, as General Sullivan talked about, and it's our focus in Korea, our focus in the Pacific. Our forces in the region have heavily been tilted toward the North, East Asia, and Japan for over 60 years. While this is unlikely to change in our near future, we must ensure that the capabilities and capacities for operations are sustained throughout the Westpac region. These are currently under review, and we are adjusting concepts to meet requirements. What we need in the region is the ability to deploy and maneuver over long multiple lines of communication from multiple points of origin and with various basing options. Industry can help us by offering solutions that enable us to move into the area and maneuver sustain after initial entry, and I ask for your help. So in summary today, the Army is a force that is simultaneously in transition, in action, and in preparation. That is why we must regenerate our expeditionary logistics capabilities, create and sustain material readiness, and leverage innovation as much as humanly possible.